Okay, we are good on our end whenever you're ready.
Okay, good evening, everyone. This is the meeting of the South Kingstown Board of Review. It is Wednesday, February 17th, 2021. My name is Robert Cagnetta, and this is the meeting of the South Kingstown, Rhode Island Board of Review, Zoning Board of Review. Members present tonight are Thomas Daniels, our Vice Chairman, William Mark, Bill Rosen, and Casey Charkowicz. Also, excuse me, also present are Jamie Gorman, South Kingstown interim building zoning official, Amy Goins, South Kingstown special legal counsel, and Jessica Spence, our administrative support associate. The board is made up of 7 people, and 5 of them are regular voting members. 5 are required to be present to vote. In the event one of the 5 regular members is not present, an alternate will step in, and in this case, we have 2 alternates stepping in. And tonight, the voting members will be myself, excuse me, Thomas Daniels, Bill Mark, Bill Rosen, and Casey Charkowicz. Okay. Applicants are here either for a variance, dimensional, or use, or to seek a special use permit. This board is a quasi-judicial body created by the South Kingstown Ordinance pursuant to state statutes. We don't follow strict rules of evidence, and we operate in what we believe to be a fair and equitable manner. We try to let everyone speak unless they get a little carried away, and it's determined not to be relevant. So in the interests of time, please try to be on point and be brief. We do our best not to argue and keep things civil. And we try to hear the last petition by 10 o'clock. When your petition is called, please come forward and clearly state your name and spell it for the record. Please speak clearly so we can all hear you. You'll be asked to take an oath to tell the truth, and then you can present your petition along with any other witnesses to testify in your support. The board will then ask you or your witnesses questions. After the petitioner has presented their testimony, anyone else with questions about the application or wanting to support or oppose the petition will then be asked to step forward. They will identify themselves, be sworn in, and present their testimony, which may be followed up by questions from the board. Please do not direct questions to the petitioner or other witnesses. The board will allow the petitioner to ask questions raised by the audience or any other response to comments after the comment period. So we'll help direct those questions. After the hearing, all the testimony, and before a vote is taken, board members will be asked to openly discuss the evidence presented. And so you're aware, variances or special use permits require 4 of 5 voting members to vote in favor of the petition and for the granting of the requested relief. The board members will ask a lot of questions for a good reason. We cannot grant just anything we choose. There are rules to follow per the South Kingstown's ordinance. You must give testimony to support certain facts to allow your request to be approved. And we have tonight dimensional variances and special use permits on the agenda. For variances, you must offer evidence to the board setting forth the following. Your hardship is due to the unique characteristics of the subject land or the structure and is not due to the general characteristics of the surrounding area. The hardship is not the result of any prior action on your part. The granting of the variance will not alter the general character of the surrounding area. And the relief requested is at least the least relief necessary. And you must show that the hardship that will be suffered if the variance is not granted will amount to more than a mere inconvenience. Special use permits, you must present the following. The special use permit that you're requesting is specifically authorized by the zoning ordinance. So somewhere in the zoning ordinance, this has to be authorized or we do not have the power to grant it. Special use permit requested meets all the criteria set forth in our zoning ordinance that authorizes that actual special use. And then granting of the special use will not alter the general character of the surrounding area or impair the purpose or intent of the zoning ordinance. So that's why we are all here tonight. And Jessica, we have two of the petitions that are going to continue tonight.
Yes, we do.
The first is for Timothy O'Neill of 235 Middlebridge Road. Right?
Yes, that will be continued due to an error in the legal notice to March 17th.
Okay, so you want me to read it in and then we can someone can make a motion. The petition of Timothy O'Neill. Do I have to read the whole thing in to make the continuation? No.
This is Amy. No, you don't have to read the whole thing. Just please say the applicant name and the property address.
Okay, great. So this is the petition of Timothy O'Neill, and the property is located at 235 Middlebridge Road, Assessor's Map 43-4, Lot 15, is zoned R20. And the request is for next month's meeting,
Yes,
which is again
March 17th.
March 17th. Someone like to make a motion to continue that?
Or I'll make a motion to extend the petition of Timothy O'Neill, 235 Middlebridge Road, Wakefield, to the March 17th meeting for a dimensional variance.
Motion made by Mr. Mark. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Rosen. No discussion. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The second is the petition,
191 Holly Ridge.
the last one, that's what it is, of Simon Wildman of 191 Holly Ridge Road in West Kingston, Rhode Island. Assessor's Map 21, Lot 39, and is zoned R80, and that's continued to March 17th. Someone want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to continue the petition of Simon Wildman of 191 Hollywood Road to the meeting of March 17th.
Okay, great, thank you. Motion's made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Mark. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those are the only two, right, Jessica?
Yes,
Okay, so first on the agenda, we have the petition of Christopher. Oh, Jessica, should we go through the procedures of what folks need to do?
we probably should.
Yes, please.
Okay, so welcome everyone. So on Zoom, there's just a couple of things we want to go over. I'm going to ask that all applicants remain muted until your petition is called. At that point, you can unmute. The other thing is I ask that all cameras are off until your petition is called. You will give your regular testimony just like you normally would if we were in person. At the end of your testimony, the chairman will ask if there's anyone in attendance who wishes to speak. So if you are an attendee, at that point, you will need to raise your hand. To raise your hand, if you're on a computer, you're going to see a little button that says raise hand. Click that and that'll put a little hand up so I'll know that you're there. If you're calling in by phone, you're going to hit *9 to raise your hand and *6 to mute and unmute. All people will be called to speak in the order in which their hands were raised. Another thing is you'll notice on the bottom of your computer, there's a question and answer forum. That is to be used only if you are having technical difficulties. We will not answer any direct questions about the petitions on that forum. That's basically it. And everyone should also be aware that all petitions, including everything that has been submitted, is available to view online at southkingstownri.com. And if you search current zoning applications, that will bring up everything that we have on tonight, including the agenda. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, so first we have the petition of Christopher G. Keogh, Revocable Trust of 71 Main Street, Wakefield, Rhode Island, 02879, for a dimensional variance under the zoning ordinance as follows. The applicant is proposing to convert the existing mixed-use structure into a single-family dwelling. Currently, the first story is business use, and the second story is a single dwelling unit. Relief is required because locating the dwelling units on the first floor in a CD zoning district. There are no exterior changes proposed to the structure. The lot size is 11,325 square feet. The dimensional variance is required per the zoning ordinance section 402, notes of to schedule of dimensional regulations. Section 907 are standards of relief. Owner of the property is Christopher G. and Tracy L. Keogh, trustees for the premises located at 71 Main Street, South Kingstown, Rhode Island. Assessors map 57-1, lot 102, and is zoned CD, which is commercial downtown. And for this petition, we have the application with the cover letter and narrative, which is Exhibit 12, signed and dated December 11th, 2020. The owner authorization form signed December 11th, 2020. Vision appraisal, field card map 57-1, lot 102, 200-foot radius map, and the abutters list, web GIS map 57-1, and lot for 102. The legal notice, proof of certified mailings, and notarized affidavit of mailing. Amended legal notice, proof of certified mailings, and notarized affidavit of mailing. Correspondences from Christopher Keogh, dated January 1st, 2021. The continuation requests from the same dated January 6th, 2021. Applicants exhibit photos, exhibits 1 through 6. 1A is the application, 1B is a correspondence to abutters dated January 1st, 2021. Exhibit 1C is the outline of testimony. Exhibit 2 is a photo of exterior of the building. Exhibit 3 is a photo only the public entrance of the building. Photo 4 is a panoramic of the interior and the foyer. Exhibit 5 is the video entering foyer through the front door. And Exhibit 6 is the video descending the stairs from second to first floor foyer and exit. And who is here tonight for this petition?
Christopher Keogh, co-owner with my wife Tracy Keogh.
Okay, great. And I said it right half the time. So, Mr. Keogh, do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And is your wife also going to be, Tracy, going to be?
She's watching along, but she's at a separate, she won't be participating.
Very good. So why don't you tell us what you want to do?
Okay, first of all, I do want to clarify the description of what we're seeking set forth in the agenda. Where there are not currently two separate uses of the building. It's a singular use in the building, and it's currently used as office space. It had been used in the past. Well, it was originally constructed in 1930 as a single-family residence. It was converted around 1979 to office space and was used as office space up until present. It's a permitted use on the second floor for residential, but as you are aware, there's a dimensional regulation restricting residential to the second floor. We're requesting a dimensional variance to allow residential use on the first floor as well as the second floor, because to enjoy the permitted use on the second floor, for reasons I'll get into a little bit later, it's economically impossible to use the upstairs for residential and the downstairs for commercial. And so if I could, the exhibits you mentioned, we have 1A, B, C, and then 2 through 6. Are those entered into evidence at this point? Yes, yes, okay.
Yes, they are.
I just wanted to address the standards, first that you mentioned the hardship from which the applicant seeks relief. is due to the unique characteristics of the subject land or structure and not the general characteristics of the surrounding area. Our hardship here is due to the unique characteristics of the structure. As I mentioned, the building was constructed in 1930 as a single-family residence. The building is still configured as a single-family residence. And the only modification to the building really was the removal of the kitchen, and which is used for office space. So the point I'm trying to make is the house is still a house. The kitchen was removed, and the rooms were utilized for office space as opposed to residential space.
Mhm.
The building has also not been modified since 1979 to meet all the subsequent, building code and fire code requirements because it was grandfathered. We did upgrade to make mandatory fire code improvements to have a fire code system because that was no longer grandfathered. But the point is, we have a building that would require very substantial and costly modifications to bring it to current building code and fire code requirements. And there's only, as I mentioned, one entrance into the building. And we've consulted with an architect, have also consulted with the building official, and there's really no viable way to access both the first floor and the second floor except through that main entrance into the building. And there's no way to use that access to also meet building code and fire code requirements. So we have the access issue, and then there's the additional issue that if we were to convert, even if we could get beyond the access issue, there are the fire code issues that come into place. We would have to fire rate all of the ceilings and floors, the ceilings on the first floor, to have appropriate fire code separation to the floor on the second floor. We would also have to expend extensive work in making the common interior walls fire rated and fire coded. And, as I said, in consultation with the architect, it was determined to be economically not feasible to try and accommodate those two different uses in this single building. The building really lends itself to one singular use, whether it's commercial or whether it's residential, but it doesn't lend itself to a mixed use. There is a means of ingress and egress to the back of the building. There's a walkout basement, and there's also a means of ingress and egress to a small deck on the back, but those means of ingress and egress would serve really as just emergency means of ingress and egress, and could not serve as certainly not a viable commercial use entrance. So those are the main points I want to make in terms of the uniqueness of this building and why, we feel we meet the more than the mere inconvenience burden. Emphasize it's not a situation where you have a building that's currently meeting fire code and building code standards and has commercial use on the first floor and residential use on the second floor and want to convert that first floor to residential. That's not our situation. It's also not a situation where someone is trying to construct a new building in a commercial downtown and have residential on the first floor. This is truly due to the unique characteristics of the building, that it was built as a single family residence in 1930, has not been modified in any significant way, and really lends itself to the singular residential dwelling.
Mr.
Um,
Yeah, if I could, just interrupt you for a sec. So what you're saying is that, in order to have a proper separation of the two uses, it was going to take a major intervention. You just didn't want to sort of continue it as it existed, the house. It wasn't like you didn't want to just maintain it as it was, like somebody lived upstairs and there was a business downstairs.
Well, my point is that that's what I was saying. It's inaccurately described in the agenda. There's not someone living, if I had that situation, I wouldn't need the dimensional variance. So, and that's why, the letter I entered into evidence, I wrote a letter, the notice properly describes the relief we're requesting, which is a dimensional variance to have residential use on the first floor. But the notice and the agenda description, in my mind, was a little, inaccurate in that it was stating that there are currently two uses in the property.
Well, I think it's more of what's probably approved for that, or that's how the property is recognized. Would that be right, Jamie, in the sense that?
Yes, Chairman. Well, the records that we have based on the tax assessors is it shows two occupancies. So as for when it changed in 1979, I don't have a clear record of that happening.
So the implications of changing to a single family dwelling in a commercial district, is that more representative of how the building inspector would look at the building and sort of judge how those separations may or may not happen? Or how it's sprinklered, how it's, what's the purpose of the change? Like, why does he really need it in the first place?
To basically, because if the business is on the first floor currently, to convert it to residential on the first floor, he'd be required to have based on dimensional requirements. Based on our conversation, that's what is currently there, is the business on, correct?
Well, if I could speak to it, I think that the building official, the property is not zoned for, as any particular use. I think what happened was, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Gorman, but you went back through the records and didn't have a record of the prior owners removing the kitchen. So your record still showed that there was a kitchen on the first floor. And isn't that accurate, or?
So we don't have the location of the kitchen, but we do have the business and the residential use. And after speaking with Mr. Kehoe, we determined that the business was on the first floor.
Okay, so that in order to get this recognized as a single family dwelling, it would then sort of remove the requirements by the building official's office in terms of it acting as an office, so they don't have to have exit signs and things like that, right? Is this, I'm kind of just understand.
Well, I think we're kind of getting, pushed off track here a little bit by, what the field cards show, or with, building official cards show as having happened or not happened. The fact is, the office was, my father bought the building with a partner in 84. There was a realtor, Morgan Batty, that bought it in 79. Morgan Batty must have taken the kitchen out of the first floor and he converted it to office space. I don't know what the zoning ordinance said in 1979, but my guess is he didn't have to go through any type of zoning relief or building code, building permits to convert it to the office space.
Mhm.
So what we have is, we have a building that was constructed and used for however, 90 years as a residence, and then it was converted to office space without, the only structural modifications were the removal of the kitchen. I don't know whether that in 1979 would require you to get a building permit to remove a kitchen, but the fact is they removed the kitchen. The use was converted to office space. So that's the current use of the property. And the property was, it was grandfathered under most of the subsequent building code and fire code regulations for office space. For example, handicap access, it was grandfathered. But there were certain, as you know, certain requirements that were promulgated that they weren't grandfathered. After the fire station fire, there were certain fire code requirements that had to be met regardless of when you started it as office space.
Well,
So,
I'm sorry, I think that, but I guess what I'm trying to get at is that in this zone, you're not allowed to have living on the first floor. So
Well,
it's not about necessarily the current use or how the building is split up. It's more of just that you're technically not allowed to have living. It's not, the first floor isn't allowed to have residence.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that's right. This is Amy Goins. So that's why he's here. He's I think maybe what you're asking is, why is this advertised as a dimensional variance and not a use variance? The answer is, I reviewed that same question. The building official brought that question to me. I think it's in the nature of a dimensional variance because you're seeking to alter a dimensional provision. I think, you can make an argument that use relief would be needed, but in my opinion, it's a dimensional variance. I think the board and Attorney Kehoe is going to present his case. The board can determine whether the standards for dimensional relief have been satisfied. But in my opinion, it's dimensional relief that's required.
Dimension because the use is changing on a floor in the building?
Dimensional because the ordinance specifies that residential use shall not be permitted on the first floor, and he's seeking to alter that dimensional requirement. I believe it was in 2019, an application for another property was advertised, and I think it may have been withdrawn before the board passed on it. I think the property owner changed their plans. That was back in June 2019. Same zone, commercial downtown. We advertised it as a dimensional variance relief required for locating dwelling units on the first floor in a commercial downtown district. Because again, it's a permitted use. It's just a regulation of, it's a provision of the ordinance that the use is not permitted on the first floor. So when Jamie asked whether it required use relief or dimensional relief, I told him my opinion is dimensional relief is required.
So the burden of Mr. Kehoe has is to say that the building doesn't have a good purpose to function as a divisioned commercial building.
He has to, I want to make sure we don't hold him to the standard of a use variance, right? He doesn't have to show lack of all beneficial use. He has to show least relief necessary and more than a mere inconvenience with regard to the location of the residential use on the first floor. So
Got it.
you should evaluate the application according to the dimensional variance standards.
Okay, so why he can't live just on the second floor?
well, can I speak? First of all, I think that
Sure.
I believe the town granted a dimensional variance to allow living on the first floor of a structure behind, I'm not sure of the current restaurant name, but I knew it as Giro's Restaurant in Peacedale. My understanding is that was granted a dimensional variance to have residential use on the first floor. That was my understanding. But secondly, if the board, if the town wants to revisit and make a different standard for this in the future, they could change it to a use variance, but right now, the application before you is for a dimensional variance, and it really is the same. I think you have someone before you tonight that wants to extend a deck, and, you routinely grant these. It's a very, very low burden. And part of my position, and one point I'll come to, is it's not in violation of the comprehensive plan or the zoning ordinances. It was put in as a dimensional variance. And in my mind, that shows an intent not to hold an applicant to an extreme, the more difficult burden of a use variance. And again, I want to emphasize, and this is not like, it's going to open it up to everybody on Main Street. I have a unique building. I have a single family home. It's not a place that's already been divided up, and I got commercial on the first floor and residential on the second, and I want to change it. This is, we want to have the right to enjoy a permitted use of the property. The permitted use on the second floor is residential, and the hardship is we cannot enjoy that permitted use on the second floor without also being able to use the first floor for residential purposes as well. And that's our hardship.
Okay.
Oh.
I mean, that's exactly good. Okay.
Okay.
So board members, do you have any questions for the applicant relative to his position of and observations of the building?
I've got a lot more to go, but
Okay. No, I'm just curious, just so far, if they had questions, just to make sure that we're all on the same path.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question, Tom Daniels. My question is more for Amy, our legal counsel. If we grant this dimensional variance, does this create a nonconformity in the CD?
No, remember that when we grant variances, you're allowing something by virtue of the variance, right? So a use or a structure that exists as a non-conforming use or structure is something that the zoning board has never granted explicit permission for, right? Something that was legal at one point and then the ordinance changed and now it's not in conformance with the current ordinance. When an applicant comes before you, like all of them tonight, and asks for explicit permission to deviate from the ordinance, whether by use, by variance, or special use permit, that becomes then a use or structure existing or permitted by variance or special use permit, as the case may be. So it doesn't create a nonconformity. It creates a condition that's permitted explicitly under a variance or a special use permit. I think maybe if you're asking, would it create an anomaly? I guess the answer is yes, in the same way that every variance you grant authorizes a condition that is at odds with an explicit provision of the zoning ordinance. But that's in your judgment to decide whether the application meets the standards.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. Any other board members, questions or?
Yeah, I have a question for Mr. Keel. Was this ever used as a law office? The building?
yes.
And was there a residence on the second floor at that particular time?
No. To my knowledge, the building, it was constructed in 1930 as a single-family residence. Stephanie Osborne, one of your former board members, it was her home when she was a young child. And in 1979, a realtor, Morgan Batty, purchased the property. He converted it to a real estate office in 1979. I believe he's the one that took the kitchen out. My father and another attorney, William Buckley, purchased it in 1984 and converted it to a law office. My wife and I purchased it in 1993 and continued the use of the building as a law office. And it was operated as a law office. COVID-19 arrived. Most of the building, it's 2,500 square feet of office space. It's not broken up. It accommodates, it lends itself to a singular use. I shared the space with Martha Day. She's a title attorney for probably 10 years. We got along great, so it was easy to operate in the building as kind of we weren't partners, but we shared the expenses in the building together. COVID hit. That changed her practice. She no longer had the need for a large conference room and, large meetings with people. She gave me her notice that she was going to start operating from her home. I don't need that kind of space. I tried to rent it for 12 months, had nobody interested in renting 2,500 square feet of office space for, that really accommodates one tenant. So that probably more than answers your question that to my knowledge, there was never someone living on the second floor with office use on the first, because again, there's only one entrance into the first floor and the second floor.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question for Mr. Gorman, for Jamie. So if we allow this sort of the change of use, or the dimensional variance, excuse me, if someone down the line chooses to revert it back to its mixed, first, second floor, does that sort of get rid of all the grandfathering, and that person has to then get everything up to code immediately?
For a mixed use?
Right. I mean, meaning like, because
Yeah.
now they're sort of grandfathered because there's this weird thing going on.
Yeah,
But if it were to change back someday, would it?
yeah,
kick in?
you'd have to comply with the accessibility as well as fire alarm, fire separation, a number of things, absolutely.
So in this case, as it stands now, as the building exists now, do they have to do all of that? Or only if you're doing an intervention of the building, they would have to sort of bring everything up to code?
For it to be converted to a single family dwelling,
No, meaning like if just if they're saying, you know what, we're gonna have it as it's supposed to, as it's designated to function, second floor family, and first floor as a commercial. Do they technically have to do anything to it right now to use it as that function, like as to purpose?
Essentially, you would have to rate the enclosure and separate the two occupancies, yes.
So just by the fact that, I mean, because they haven't done anything to it, I guess is my point. Like, so what makes them have to do something?
Well, Mr. Keough is planning on doing a single family dwelling, but
No, I mean, I'm sorry, if he weren't here at all, like,
If he wa-
and it's just continuing its use, like it can stay grandfathered and they wouldn't have to do a major intervention in perpetuity, technically.
I think the issue at hand was the fact that there was a discrepancy with what was actually there and what was the intent moving forward.
Okay.
Could I interject and answer the question? The building is grandfathered for office use. So to answer your question, there isn't anything I have to do to continue to use the entire building as office space. So, but, just like the person that wants to put in a deck on and be here tonight and say, I'd like to put a deck on. There's nothing that says you have to put a deck on. But if you want to, enjoy a reasonable use of your property, they want to put a deck on it, the side yard setback, they can't meet the side yard setbacks. It's going to violate the strict requirements of the zoning ordinance. It's going to, as council said, you granted, it's going to create an anomaly. That person has a deck that can encroach on the side yard setbacks. Right now, I want to keep the building. My son's going to law school next year. I hope to turn it back into an office someday, but I need to have some reasonable use of the property for the next 4 years. He's still in last year in college now, 3 years of law school, and I need to be able to use the building for something. And so, but to answer your question, if I convert it to a residence and there's not anything going to have to do to meet fire code or building code to turn it into a residence. Now, when my son graduates from law school and he wants to use it as a law office, there's going to be a lot of requirements I'm going to have. I'm going to have to make it handicap accessible. I'm going to no longer be grandfathered, but I'm kind of making a calculated decision. Do I let the building sit for the next 5 or 6 years, or do I enjoy some reasonable use on it and bite the bullet when he comes back to town and wants to use it as his law office?
That is great. That's the explanation I think that I was hoping to understand a bit more of. Is it's a very strange situation. So this helps.
Because then I have, as far as that building as an office, that's only going to have, I don't want to sell it. I want to keep it. But, somebody else, they're not going to buy that building for an office unless they want to use it as an office. So I'm kind of stuck where I don't want to sell it. I can't use it as it currently exists. So I want to enjoy a reasonable use of it with a dimensional variance, and down the road, have it available for my son to use as a law office.
Okay.
So I don't know, do you want to see if there are any other questions or?
No, I mean, I think you can carry on sort of with
Okay.
that premise. I mean, I certainly feel like you've presented it well.
Okay, so the next one was that the hardship is not the result of any prior action of the applicant and does not result primarily from the desire of the applicant to realize greater financial gain. We've done nothing. Our predecessors did nothing. When they converted the building, I don't know how long this dimensional variance has been in existence, but my understanding is, not more than a handful of years. But what was done to the building in the past was, there was no, up until that ordinance was enacted a handful of years ago, there was nothing to prevent us from converting it back to a residence. And so we haven't done anything to cause the hardship. What's caused the hardship is this subsequent, regulation that was put in place, dimensional regulation put in place after the building was in its current state and in its current use. Okay. I've mentioned the only modifications to the building. There was some minor decorative changes, but the kitchen was removed, and that was it. And that was done again around 1979. And the hardship was created after that kitchen was taken out and the use was changed to office space. The hardship does not result primarily from the desire to realize greater financial gain. We want to enjoy a permitted use of the second floor, which is permitted again on the second floor. And the only way we can reasonably enjoy that is with the dimensional variance relative to the first floor. I've mentioned our intention is to hold on to the building. I'd like it someday to be a law office for my son. So we're not doing this. We're doing this so we can have some use of the building until he can use it in the future as an office, or, perhaps the things would be different after the pandemic passes, but no one is looking for 2,500 square foot of office space with what's going on with COVID and everyone moving towards virtual practices. I've mentioned we spent 12 months trying to find a tenant unsuccessfully for the property. Again, our desire is to have a reasonable use of our property, not to desire for greater financial gain. Okay, the next was that granting the requested variance will not alter the general character of the surrounding area or impair the intent or purposes of the zoning ordinance or the comprehensive plan upon which the ordinance is based. This property, it abuts 3 properties. 2 of those 3 properties are single-family residences occupied by single families. The property to the rear coincidentally was a law office, and it was converted from a law office to a single-family residence. Next door, on the other side, is the Domestic Violence Center. But the other point is, up and down Main Street, there are other single-family residences, and there certainly are residences up and down Main Street on the 2nd floor. Then the next point, granting the requested variance will not impair the purpose of the zoning ordinance or the comprehensive plan. Again, if I think that the zoning ordinance, the intent is clear, that if an applicant can show that it can meet the more than mere inconvenience standards, such as the deck encroaching on the setbacks, then the zoning ordinance permits that residential use on the 1st floor. And I contend that our request is just as consistent with the intent of the zoning ordinance and the comprehensive plan as the person looking to put a deck on. There are no changes to the exterior of the building, so there'll be no changes to the general character of the surrounding area. What else? And again, I just want to emphasize, I mean, you're always concerned about setting precedents. This is a situation, it's a unique situation with the building. Someone can't come in and say, hey, I've got a commercial already on the 1st floor and residential on the 2nd. I need, the same relief Kehoe got. That's a different situation. That's already, I have a unique situation.
That's not how the board makes our judgments based on previous decisions, because each has to sort of stand on its own.
No, I understand, but it also goes to my point about the intent of the comprehensive plan. I mean, I think, part of the comprehensive plan would be ideally they would like, commercial on the 1st floor of these businesses. And what I'm trying to say is that this is not going to lead to, inconsistencies with the comprehensive plan, because when somebody's already set up with commercial on the 1st floor, or they're constructing a new building, they don't have a unique situation like I do to show they need the dimensional variance. As far as the relief being the least relief necessary, there's only one relief. We can't get partial relief here. It's either we can have that residential use on the 1st floor, or we can't. There's not, okay, you can use half of the 1st floor for residential use, but not the other half. There's only one level of relief. So this is the least relief available. In granting the variance, the hardship suffered by the owner of the subject property, if the dimensional variance is not granted, amounts to more than a mere inconvenience. Again, we want to enjoy a permitted use, and of this, the 2nd floor is a residential. We cannot do that without the dimensional relief to allow us to use the 1st floor as residential. Without this dimensional variance we are seeking. So those are kind of my submission on those factors. I have the exhibits. They're mainly introduced to show, first of all, that, so Jess, I don't know, maybe if you can bring up the picture of the exterior of the building so they can see what we're dealing with?
Sure, just give me 1 second.
Well, board members, are the board members familiar with this property and location? Were you able to sort of stop by and take a look?
I am.
Yes, I am too.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, Mr. Keo, you know, I just wanted to make sure you didn't have to spend more time than you needed. Because we certainly understand the situation so,
Well, I mean, I guess for the sake of completeness and the record, I would like the exhibits, entertained by the board. You don't have to leave them up there.
no, but
Running
that's all
late.
part of our package. Like
Right.
we get a chance to.
So that's the exterior, and then Jess, if you could flip to that's the main entrance to, which is exhibit 2, exhibit 3. This is the panoramic that shows, this is the entry to the foyer. You've got to your right, to the left are entrances to the first floor offices. Straight ahead is the stairway to the second floor. And, as I mentioned, we met with an architect. There's no way to establish a separate entrance there to the second floor and to the first floor. I also have those, video clips, and if you don't want to play them at this point, I do hope that the board has considered them as part of your deliberations.
I mean, we can certainly see if there's anyone in the audience that has concerns or questions relative to this, which can hopefully get you. Jess, could you remind folks how to sort of speak up?
Sure. So if you're calling in by phone, it's *9 to raise your hand, *6 to mute and unmute. If you are on the computer, hit the simple raise hand button. No one is raising their hand.
Board members, do you have more questions or anything else for Mr. Keo?
I have one quick question, I guess.
Mr. Rosen?
You're planning to convert this into a single-family residence. I assume that means that you're going to have to put in a kitchen on the first floor. Will that need some sort of variance or whatever?
Well, it's not going to need a variance, but it will, require a, building permit like anyone who puts a kitchen in the structure.
I'm just trying to learn here, so.
Yeah, no, I'm happy. I hope I don't ask away. I'm happy to answer any questions. If I sound a little forceful on things, it's because I do feel like things kind of got off the tracks a little bit by the, describing this as currently a mixed use, which it's not. And also, I'm very concerned about it not, entering the realm of a different type of variance than your next applicant or two that want to put a deck within a side yard setback.
Thank you.
I have a question, Tom Daniels. Mr. Kehoe, is there currently a fire escape from the second floor?
There is not.
Okay, so it could not be legally used for residents at this point, correct?
I don't believe that's a requirement. It's a single family residence. It's not, there are residences, my residence, I don't have a fire escape. I don't know about yours, but.
Oh, but you have an office on the first floor and you have a residence on the second floor.
See, this
It
is
would seem to me that for the second floor to be legally occupied, it would need a means of escape. You don't have any.
Well,
This
that's part of that would be part of the grandfathering of the property and the fact that it didn't
Well,
have.
See, this is where I'm getting concerned. And maybe your counsel can clarify. There's nothing going to be grandfathered. There will not be an office on the first floor. This will be a single family residence like Mrs. Turco's residence next door. She doesn't have a fire escape.
No,
Like
no,
Van-
no. I think he's asking relative to its current use, not to its proposed use.
But the current use does not require a fire escape. It's a singular use as an office
So-
building.
It's not really a relevant question, Mr. Daniels, to,
No, I'm glad every question is relevant. I want to answer it, but I just want to make sure that you understand, Mr. Daniels, that if the relief is granted, this is going to be a single family residence. If anything, it has more fire code protections than are required because it's going to have a fire system in it. Honestly, from a liability standpoint, and I've already talked to the architect about a fire escape, but that would be something just for my own purposes for liability that I would want to consider putting in. So, but my point is that after the relief is granted, this will be a single family residence like yours, like mine, like Mrs. Turco next door, and like Van Coogan's residence in the back. And if anything, it will exceed fire code requirements.
Mr. Kehoe, that wasn't the nature of my question.
All right, well, help
The
me
nature of
understand.
let me finish. The nature of my question goes to if we do nothing, if we do not grant this, can you legally go ahead and rent the upstairs apartment as a residence?
No, because it's, the problem is that, could I legally rent it? I guess as long as the building, if the only thing they could do is, open the front door and run up the stairs so they don't utilize the first floor for residential. But I mean, you can't have two uses there. It's impossible.
Okay,
And
that's
the
what
only
I'm trying
way-
to help you. I'm trying to help.
I know, and I appreciate your help. I just want to make sure we're all understanding that it's going to be just like your home, just like my home after the relief is granted.
I got
And,
it.
yes.
okay,
Yep. Okay. Board members, any other questions?
I just have one question.
Mr. Charco?
In your letter, it sounded like you might be occupying the property as your primary residence with a home office out, on the first floor potentially, or somewhere in the property. So I was just wondering if have an intention to continue with the signage out front, if you were to go that route.
I mean, well, first of all, I mentioned that I don't know, my house is on the market, so that's a possibility that I could occupy it. I don't need a sign out there. So I probably would not have a sign, but I would comply with whatever the zoning requirements are. But, I guess if you could help me understand what your concern is about the sign. I mean, because having a sign there would, I thought saying I have a home office and have a sign is going to be more consistent with what you're hoping to do, is have a kind of an office feel or commercial feel on the first floor. So I don't, I'm not sure if that putting in there, I could use it as a home office, you have objections to it, or what your concerns are, but, and honestly, I think it's probably unlikely that I'm going to use it as my principal residence.
I'm just trying to get to the ultimate intent for the property, just to understand if your intent is to occupy it as primary residence with a.
Well, I didn't say, my intent is to enjoy a reasonable use of the property. And right now, the only reasonable use of that property is going to be as residential. And the only way to do that is with the dimensional variance. So my plans would be to convert it to a residential dwelling and rent it out to a single family. That would be my intent. If someday my son may move in there and use it as a home office, I could potentially do that. But I don't know. All I know is I can't enjoy a use of it now. And I don't know that, respectfully, I don't know whether it, should matter whether I was going to move in there or I was going to rent it out or my son was going to move in there. I mean, I think
I think the question is, can you have a sign out there once it becomes a private residence?
I think that'd be up to the building official. And if certainly if they don't want, they say the sign can't be there, then the sign can't be there.
Okay,
I
thank
mean,
you.
the sign has got Martha Day's name on it, so I'm gonna have to take it down anyway at some point.
Board members, any other questions for Mr. Keough? Okay. Do you have anything else to present, Mr. Keough?
Well, just that I would say that if the board, I didn't bring an architect on, I don't think it's needed for dimensional variance, but if the board felt that there was additional evidence needed to substantiate, my application, I'd want the opportunity to, present that evidence.
Well, it doesn't sound like anybody had concerns about that. My next question was going to be if anyone was willing to make a motion or had some other thoughts.
So are there any other questions, or is that it?
No,
Make a
I mean,
motion.
if someone wants to make a motion, I think I just was leaving it open to the members to make a motion.
I'm good to make a motion if no one has any more comments or move
Please.
forward. So, I mean, ultimately, we're being asked to approve a dimensional variance for a resident who's seeking to maintain an existing structure for its original intended use when it was first built. And under 402, the dimensional variance has precluded that use as being in a commercial district and a commercial space. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the petition of Chris Keough, a revocable trust, and the petition as read in by the chairman. I wish I could use all the points Mr. Keough made for the remaining points, but I guess I'll try to fill in the blanks myself. Mr. Keough represented himself. We had no other people speaking in support or opposition to the existing petition. The materials entered as read by the chairman was the application, the tax card, and the field card. So just to get right to it, the board finds that the hardship from which the applicant seeks relief is due to the unique characteristics of the subject land and structure and not the general characteristics of the surrounding area. It is not due to any physical or economic disability of the applicant. It was once a single family use. It had grandfathered in pertaining to the commercial space. And, it is subject to future code compliancy if Mr. Keough, like he mentioned, chooses to go back to, from a single, if granted, from a single family use to a commercial use. The board finds that the hardship is not the result of any prior action of the applicant and does not result primarily from a desire of the applicant to realize a greater financial gain. Because the hardship from which the applicant seeks the residential use of the first floor, it's not available under the current conditions. It's not a gross expansion of anything on the property. It's just installing a kitchen to make it usable. The board finds that the granting of the requested variance will not alter the general character of the surrounding area or impair the intent or purpose of the zoning ordinance or the comprehensive plan upon which the ordinance is based. The general character of the surrounding area, leads me to believe that the prescribed variance only maintains that the general character of other residential structures on Main Street or immediately surrounding Mr. Keough's property, and that the effects of the pandemic have created an environment that makes, I'd say, the current use strained as a commercial space. The board finds that the relief to be granted is the least relief necessary because, again, like I mentioned before, the applicant is not seeking to do a large physical expansion of the property. It's simply seeking to change the use within the existing walls. The board finds that the hardship suffered by the owner of the subject property, if the dimensional variance is not granted, amounts to more than a mere inconvenience because, again, given the current economic climate as a result of the pandemic, And for someone who hopes to, maintain a structure for future generations, I think the hardship is more than a mere inconvenience, certainly. So with that, I vote to approve with no conditions.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mark. Is there someone willing to make a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Charkowik. Any other discussion? Okay, Mr. Mark,
Aye.
Mr. Charkowik,
Aye.
Mr. Daniels,
Aye.
Mr. Rosen,
Aye.
Mr. Cagnetta, aye. Motion passes. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
No problem. I believe I saw Mr. Kenyon is here now, right, Jessica?
Yes, he is.
Next is the petition of Michael and Donna Montefort of the care of the Walter J. Manning III, 50 Anchorage Road in Narragansett, Rhode Island, 02882, for a special use permit under the zoning ordinance as follows. The applicant is seeking an approval of a special use permit to locate an on-site wastewater treatment plant closer to a wetland than allowed. The 150 feet is required, 95 feet is requested. The relief of 55 feet is needed. The project previously received approval from the Conservation Commission, and that's dated December 1st, 2020. Lot size is 1.6 acres. A special use permit is required per the zoning ordinance special section 504.1, special use permits, location of OWTS, and section 907, standards of relief. The property is owned by Michael Montefort, and for the premises located at Assessor's Map 79-3, Lot 15, and is zoned R80. And Mr. Kenyon, you are here tonight for this petition. How are you, sir?
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope everyone's doing well. For the record, I'm John Kenyon, attorney for the applicant. The applicant's property is located on the Heather Hollow Drive, which is in an R80 zoning district. It's the lot is currently vacant and it's 1.4 acres in size. The applicant's proposing to construct a single-family residence, which will be serviced by a proposed OWTS. The proposed house will meet all the zoning setback lot coverage requirements, but the OWTS will be located within 150 feet of a wetland located on the southern portion of the lot. The applicant has received state approval for the OWTS. We're here tonight requesting a special use permit under section 504.1 of the zoning ordinance. Jason Clough prepared the information required for the application with the Conservation Commission. I don't think I've had one of these with the board since the town came up with that new application, but there's now a kind of lengthy application that gets filed with the Conservation Commission, which helps out because it gives them all the information they need. We did appear before the Conservation Commission. They gave us a positive recommendation with the condition that the applicant narrow the size of the driveway, which we have agreed to. So we're fine with that as any condition of approval. Mr. Monteforti is here tonight along with Jason Clough, who is the project engineer. I'm going to ask that Jason be sworn in and provide some testimony at this time.
Absolutely. Is Jason out there?
Yes, I'm here.
Ah, great. There you are. So Jason, recognized as an expert, you've been in front of this board before, or Mr. Kenyon?
I'm not sure if I've been before zoning in South Kingstown. If I was, it was a while ago. I've certainly been before a number of boards, zoning boards, planning boards throughout the state and in Massachusetts as well.
Mr. Kenyon, you want him sworn like as an expert, seen as an expert? I'm sorry.
Yes, but I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if someone needs to swear him in first. Are you swearing in witnesses over Zoom or?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes. So, Mr. Clough, do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great. Thank you,
And
sir.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask that he be recognized as an expert in civil engineering.
Yes, Mr. Coe is recognized as an expert.
Thank you. Now, Jason, are you familiar with the applicant's property located at Heather Hollow Drive?
Yes, I am.
And is the property designated as tax assessor's plat 79-3 lot 15?
Yes, it is.
And did you prepare the site plan that was submitted along with the application?
Yes, I did.
Are you familiar with the existing uses surrounding the property?
Yes.
And what type of uses are in general located around the applicant's property?
Mainly existing single-family home lots. There are some vacant lots as well, but those are the main uses: single-family homes and vacant land.
And how big is the applicant's property?
It's 1.6 acres.
And it's in an R80 zoning district?
Yes.
And could you just briefly describe the existing conditions of the property?
The existing property is mainly vacant. There is a driveway which crosses the property to another property that's behind it. But other than that, it's a vacant property with a wetland area located on in the southern portion of the lot.
And has someone flagged that wetland for the applicant?
Yes, Christian Sutter, who's with my firm, Dupree Engineering. He's a registered professional wetland scientist.
And are the wetlands that he flagged, are they shown on the site plan that was submitted?
Yes.
And could you explain to the board the type of wetland that's on the property?
The wetland is a forested wetland with a size, it's less than 3 acres in area, which means basically that it doesn't have an associated buffer that goes along with the wetland edge.
And what is the applicant proposing to construct on the property?
It's proposing to construct a single-family home with associated driveway, septic system, well, lawn areas, and drainage BMPs.
And how many bedrooms is he proposing?
4 bedrooms.
And does the proposed house meet the front, side, and rear yard setbacks under the zoning ordinance?
Yes, it does.
And does it also meet the lot coverage requirements under the zoning ordinance?
Yes, it does.
And now, does the proposed driveway provide adequate ingress and egress to the house?
Yes, in my opinion.
And in your opinion, does it provide adequate area for parking for the proposed house?
Yes.
And in your opinion, will the use of the proposed driveway negatively affect the traffic flow in that area?
In my opinion, no.
And does the proposed driveway provide adequate access in case of fire, emergency, or catastrophe?
In my opinion, yes.
And is there adequate area on the property for trash storage?
Yes.
And will the property be serviced by a private well?
Yes, there is a private well proposed.
And where is that being proposed?
The well is located on the south side of the proposed home.
And is there any issue with providing electrical service to the lot?
Not that I'm aware of. There's electric utility poles that are present, and there's numerous existing residential homes in the area.
And is the applicant proposing any signage on the property?
No.
Is the applicant proposing any non-residential exterior lighting?
No.
And has the applicant received approval from RIDM for the proposed OWTS?
Yes, they have.
And was a copy of the OWTS approval submitted with the application?
Yes.
And could you explain to the board the type of OWTS you're proposing?
Yes. The proposed OWTS is what's called a pressurized shallow narrow drain field. That's the leach field. And it's preceded by a pretreatment device consisting of an Advantex AX20 treatment unit. The pressurized shallow narrow drain field, it's a dosed system. There's a pump that pumps the effluent to the system, and it applies it evenly over the trenches that are proposed.
And where is the proposed system located?
It's located on the west, the leach field is located to the northwest of the proposed home.
And how did you come up with that location?
Basically, it was positioned to maximize distance to the wetland, and also, it's located in the area of the approved testing, soil evaluation testing from DEM.
And did DEM approve that location for the OWTS?
Yes, they did.
And how far from the wetland edge is the proposed system located?
The proposed system at its closest point is actually located 102.3 feet.
And is that why we're here tonight requesting the special use permit? Because it's located within 150 feet of a wetland?
Yes, that's correct.
And in your professional opinion, is the proposed location as far from the wetland that the system could be located and still meet DEM's requirements?
Yes, in my opinion.
And could you just briefly explain to the board how this type of system works?
So the system, it has a building sewer, comes out to the septic tank, just like any conventional system would. From the septic tank, there's a pump which will pump from the outlet side of the tank into the Advantex treatment unit. Basically, it's kind of like it's a filtering device that the effluent it's applied to the top of it, filters its way through, it's collected, and then brought back to the inlet end of the tank. The system is designed to recirculate, keep running that effluent back through the device. There's a splitter valve, which in higher flow levels, when the levels are up in the tank, it'll allow effluent to go to the pump chamber, which then doses the leach field. So there's a float elevations. Once they reach a certain elevation, it'll turn the pump on, and it'll pump a dose, which is a set dose amount to the field. And the system design is for the design flow is to spread that flow out over the entire day. So you have a dose, the design dose is for once per hour.
Thank you. And is the proposed system considered alternative technologies?
Yes, it is.
And what is the separation distance between the bottom of the leaching field and the seasonal high water table?
The separation is 2 feet, which is what is required for this type of system.
And now section 504.4B of the zoning ordinance requires that the alternative technologies provide a certain level of treatment as measured at the outlet of the treatment unit prior to discharge to a drain field. Are you familiar with those requirements?
Yes.
And does the proposed system have a minimum total nitrogen removal of 50%?
Yes, it does.
What is the minimum total nitrogen removal of the proposed system?
The proposed system provides 50%, the minimum. That's what it's approved for with the state.
And does the proposed system have a minimum nitrogen reduction to less than or equal to 19 milligrams per 1 total nitrogen?
Yes.
And what is the total reduction in TSS and BOD for this system?
Effluent is reduced to less than or equal to 30 milligrams per liter for both TSS and BOD.
And what is the minimum fecal coliform removal for the proposed system?
It would be for less than 1,000 parts per 100 milliliters.
And is there any potable water supply less than 100 feet from the drain field?
No.
And will the proposed system require a continuance operation and maintenance agreement with the owner?
Yes.
And will that be recorded in the land evidence records?
Yes, it will. It's a required action before the system will be conformed with the Department of Environmental Management.
And are you proposing any stormwater management for the property?
Yes, we are.
And what have you?
We have, for the rooftop area, we have 2 dry wells, one in the front yard and one in the rear yard. So basically splitting the roof up front and back. And then for the driveway area, we have a rain garden, which is proposed in the front yard area.
And did you supply the town with drainage calculations for a 24-hour, 25-year storm?
Yes, I did.
And have you provided control measures to ensure that no net increase between pre and post development site conditions and volume or rate of stormwater runoff for such a 24-hour, 25-year rainfall event occurs on the adjacent properties or roadways from the subject property?
Yes,
Proposed stormwater management design maintain the existing natural drainage patterns to the degree feasible?
yes, in my opinion.
And does the stormwater design divert the water away from the OWTS?
Yes, it does.
And is there a minimum 15-foot horizontal separation distance between the OWTS drain field and the edge of any stormwater infiltration zone?
Yes,
And have you calculated the buildable area of the subject property?
yes, I have. The buildable area for the lot is 27,987 square feet.
And does the proposed impervious coverage, is it less than 15% of the buildable area of the lot?
Yes, the calculation comes out to 14.8%.
And in your professional opinion, has the OWTS been located as far as possible from the wetland edge?
In my opinion, yes.
And has the house been located as far as possible from the wetland edge while still maintaining the town zoning setbacks?
Yes, in my opinion.
And did the applicant receive a positive recommendation from the Conservation Commission?
Yes,
And did they request that the driveway be narrowed somewhat from what was originally proposed?
yeah, there was a request to narrow the driveway as much as possible. And, we looked at doing that. So basically the area of the driveway where it connects off of Heather Hollow Drive before it needs to widen out for the garage will be reduced to a 9-foot width.
And in your professional opinion, if the system is constructed and maintained to the required specifications, will the location of the OWTS within 150 feet of the wetland have an adverse impact on the wetland?
In my opinion, no.
Will it have any negative impacts on the surrounding properties?
In my opinion, no.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions. If the board has any of Mr. Clough.
Thank you, Mr. Kenyon. Board members, any questions for Mr. Clough?
I do. Tom Daniels, good
Yes,
evening, Mr. Kenyon,
Good evening.
Mr. Clough.
Oh,
The Conservation Commission on December 1st gave you a blessing to go ahead here based on a site plan of November 5th, 2020. And in that approval, if you will, or recommendation to go ahead, they indicated the 9-foot driveways, which you made a reference to at the end of your testimony, but I don't see a site plan that reflects that change. I see the original site plan dated 11/5. They also asked you to reduce as much as possible the entryway to the garage slab. And do you have a drawing that shows what you've revised?
we did do a revision. It appears that it didn't get through with the submission. I'm prepared to provide that. I can send that out tomorrow to the town. Basically, if you're looking at the plan that you have the width of 12 feet from Heather Hollow Drive. That's going to be reduced to 9 feet.
Okay.
And then it's going to have to widen out to allow access into the garage area.
Well, at what point does it widen out?
You need a minimum for just returning, getting maneuvering into the garage. The standard we follow is 30 feet from the base of the garage. You would need to kind of get out. So basically, the full width is ending about in line with the end of the dry well that's in the front yard. And then it narrows down from there, angles down to the 9-foot width.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Daniels. Mr. Clough, you can share that screen if you want. If you should have the ability to share that if you wanted to bring it up for the board to see.
All right, I can do that.
Is there a way that we can digitally, or during this Zoom, that we can recognize this as a new submittal? As a new exhibit?
This is Amy Goins. Yes, you can accept this, and it should be, subject to the condition that the applicant provide a true and exact copy of this site plan to the zoning board via the clerk. And you know that in the past, we've approved applications where the site plans were modified at the meeting. They can't physically sign it in this case, but you can, if that's an issue here, you can approve an application with a site plan that's amended as discussed during the meeting. And you can add a condition to direct the applicant to submit an amended site plan to that effect.
And will we have to recognize the drawing that he's referring to now as that exhibit? Or if they're going to say that if this is what we're going to submit, we just need to identify it, that it's actually submitted?
Yeah, correct. You can just identify that this document that's being shown on the share screen is the amended site plan. And for the benefit of people listening, I just need the applicant, and I think it's been done, but I want the applicant or his expert or his attorney to just explain specifically how the amended site plan or how this new plan differs from the one that was posted on the zoning board website in advance of the meeting.
Okay, so the plan submitted with the application was dated 11/9/2020, and this one is dated 12/9/2020.
I believe the one that was submitted prior was 11/5. I got the
11/5.
revision block here.
11/5, I'm sorry, 11/5/2020.
And then 12/9/20, we had prepared an updated plan. And then that's got a description of driveway update. It's the same plan, just an updated plan, and the changes were focused on the driveway, which have been reduced. So we have a 9-foot width here coming in, and then you have this garage, the face of the garage. So, you need access into those bays. So it's wider in this area, and then it tapers down. So this is what we were able to do.
And is that the only thing that has changed on this plan relative to the dates?
Yes.
Mr. Kenyon, do you want this to be a different exhibit, or is that fine just identified as its date?
I think it's fine, just identified by the date. And I just, Jason, when we met with the Conservation Commission and they requested this condition, I believe you raised the issue that the driveway would have to widen a certain distance from the house, correct?
Yeah, I did mention that because, the way that the lot's configured and with the garage positioned as it is, I mean, you need that access. You couldn't run the 9 feet very close to the house and have reasonable access into the garage. So, I explained what we were going to have to do, and we would do the best that we could to comply with the request.
Thank you.
Mr. Daniels, does that answer your question?
It absolutely does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
While you have that open, could I ask Mr. Clow another question as well?
Yeah, Mr. Mark.
Is like right to the, as we're looking at the screen, right to the left of the driveway, is that like a geomat for the OWTS system?
This here?
Yeah.
So that's the, it's similar to a geomat. It's the pressurized shallow nail or drain field consists of 1 foot wide trenches. So we have 5 trenches here. They're 44 feet long. They consist of basically what would be a 1 foot diameter pipe that's cut in half. That pipe is situated like this, in the trench. This is looking at it in a profile view. And you have a pipe that's running through it with orifices in it that spread the effluent around. So the effluent comes out of the orifice and spreads out over the width of the trench. So it's a 12-foot wide trench. You have a spacing of 1.5 feet between the edges of the trench. Whereas a geomat it's similar. You can have 1 foot widths. They have other types, but it's a flat configuration. It has a
So
fabric on it.
What is the depth of that?
It's
I guess
shallow.
my point is I'm getting to is like you cannot build upon that or drive on it or do anything of that nature on that side of the driveway.
No, you cannot. Basically, to the bottom of this trench is 8 to 12 inches. That's the maximum of 12 inches is what's allowed per the regulations. So I mean, it's a very shallow system. You would not want to be driving over this. There are covers that are going to be there. You know, any sort of traffic on that would damage those covers and the system below.
Okay, all right.
Okay, any other questions, board members?
Yeah, this is Bill Rosen.
Yes, sir.
With respect to this leaching field that you just described, and you've got what is it, 2 feet below the surface? Is that correct?
The bottom of the system is located a foot below the proposed grade.
And then 2 feet below that is the
Water table.
groundwater table.
Correct.
2 feet below the bottom of the leaching field.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And that's what's allowed by DEM.
For this type of system, the separation is 2 feet. With other types of systems, you have separation requirements of 3 feet. But this is the standard for this type of system, similar to, there's a few other ones that do that, but because of the nature of the system, that's what's the approved requirement.
And the Advantex system itself is over on the other side of the garage.
Yeah, it's located here, and the pump's located there, so it'll pump to the leach field.
And there's a pipe that leads from the pump to the leaching field. Is that a single pipe or is that several pipes?
Just a single pipe. It connects into a header that connects into each one of these. So it's a pipe running this way, and then T's off of this or elbows will take the laterals down each one of those 44-foot long trenches.
And the effluent is then distributed to each of the 5 pipes somehow?
Yes, it pressurizes all of the lines so that, the pump's pumping through this, it pressurizes the entire thing. There's a series of orifices in each one of these laterals. So you basically, once it fills up, you have the dose that's being applied throughout all of the orifices. And, once the dose ends, then basically everything infiltrates from there, and you'd have some drain back to the tank. And then once it fills up again, it'll have another dose.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Clow? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Clow.
You're welcome.
Mr. Kenyon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I stated, the owner is here. I wasn't going to have him testify. We're not requesting any other dimensional relief. It is just the special use permit for the OWTS. Because it's located within 150 feet, it requires the special use permit. This one's 102 feet away, which is significantly more than what DEM requires, but the town does require the special use permit. So again, we can answer any questions that the board or if the public have any.
Okay, let's find out. Jessica, is there anyone out there that is requesting to be heard?
So again, you're going to hit the raise hand function on your computer. And if you're by phone, it's *9 to raise hand and *6 will mute and unmute. And I do have someone, William Pryor.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Pryor, you can unmute yourself.
Hi.
Hi.
All right.
And,
So I'm.
hang on, just please state your name and spell it.
Oh yes, William Pryor. P-R-I-O-R.
And you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so please go ahead. What's your question, statement, otherwise?
Yeah, so my mom and I live at 10 Heather Hollow Drive. We recently purchased the property in December of 2019. And just obviously, we're very close to this proposed system that's being installed. I just had a couple of concerns that I'd like to express to the board here.
Please.
The surrounding area, as anybody that's visited the area, I'm not sure if any board members have had an opportunity to do so, is very, very wet. I know that Depreet Engineering, they determined the wetland setback requirements and everything, and they are requesting a variance, obviously, for this system. The concern that I have is, while some of the area might not fully be considered wetland, it is still very, very wet. And there's a lot of drainage issues that exist in this area. Concerned not only about the system itself, but also stormwater and runoff being
Absolutely.
a problem in the area.
Mhm.
There's already quite a drainage problem there. And I really don't feel that enough is being done to address those concerns. I'm not sure if the board, any board members have had a chance to view this property yet in person, but I'd suggest that you do.
So, Mr. Pryor, are the concerns more of the street conditions or more of sort of this property in particular?
This property in particular, and also I'm the driveway that was referenced. Access to my property continues down, and it's very, very wet getting through there. And I'm concerned that any of these actions in terms of managing stormwater runoff or any construction activities related to this on-site water treatment system or anything there would cause some problems and impede access to the property here.
Okay. And so you are then, are you to the west of this property or
To
south?
the, see, I'm trying to get my bearings here. Sorry.
To the south.
South,
south.
yeah.
To the
Yeah.
south. Okay. So, okay, so it's a matter of understanding how the property is going to manage not only its own any rainwater it's sort of creating by its construction, but also that its development isn't going to push anything.
Exactly. I have, as it is, a severe drainage problem in my yard. And as anyone else in this neighborhood knows, we're definitely impacted by a lot of runoff and a lot of water. And it's the nature of this neighborhood as well. It was constructed over time. My property was one of the most recently constructed property in the development. And as a result of that, the natural flow of water and the drainage has already kind of been changed over the years by various construction activities.
Absolutely.
And I think that anything else without, proper consideration could definitely have a further impact on the drainage conditions here.
And do you know when yours was built?
2012.
2012. Okay. Okay. So it sounds like Mr. Clow, I don't know if you're familiar with as the surrounding the property to that south area. But I don't know if you can sort of help just based on your expertise as to even from 2012 till now in terms of what is required in managing discharge from a property. It's just a stormwater, correct? Is that changed? I know it's a recent thing, but I don't know how recent.
So from 2012, the requirements really should be the same as they are today. The stormwater regulations came out, and the new ones, the current ones that we're working under, came out in 2010. Whether they were fully applied on single family lots in 2012, I'm not sure. I know there probably was some time period where maybe they weren't fully implemented. With what we're proposing here, we are meeting not only the state stormwater requirements, following the stormwater manual, but to meet the town requirements, we're actually going above and beyond that. As I had described before, there are 2 dry wells which were proposed for the roof, and then the rain garden for the driveway. So those were sized to be able to handle a 25-year storm event. So with the ability to store and infiltrate stormwater. So I mean, as the property exists today, you have a certain amount of rainfall that's going to fall on the lot. After development, really the change that you have is that you're changing a wooded or grassed surface area to something different. There's going to be lawn area, there's going to be impervious driveway, impervious roof area. So one of the things that you do with the stormwater is that you need to provide a way to handle that, the runoff that you would get. You get more runoff from an impervious surface than you would from a lawn surface or a wooded area. So that's the reason for the dry wells and for the rain gardens in this case, is to provide a means to handle that stormwater and to mitigate it to levels that are consistent with existing conditions.
So, and with those conditions, something like a dry well, if a property is already wet, how will the dry well help?
Well, I mean, in this case, basically, you're building, this lot is getting built up in order to construct it. So, there's going to be some fill in the front yard and some in the areas where these elements are going. You're not going to excavate into a wet material and put the dry well in. No, that would not work. So, we have the dry well, dry wells that are proposed. They're going to be constructed with 2 foot of separation from the bottom of the dry well to the water table, similar to what we did for the leach field. So, that's the, to meet the standard as outlined in the stormwater manual.
So will in fact raising this property level then push runoff to other properties surrounding it? Is
the way that we're grading this site is, I mean, yes, we're filling the portion of this lot, but we're directing the stormwater. The stormwater under existing conditions is flowing to the wetland area that's located in the southern portion of our lot, and that's what is proposed under proposed conditions. So, you're not pushing the water to a different property, but it's going to maintain the flow from north to the south towards the wetland.
Okay. Does that answer the question at all, or does that help relative to your concerns about the water running towards your property, or is that?
Yes and no. The property is very, very, very wet. There's a high water table, as that's already been determined.
Right.
And, the concern as far as grading and the implications that this will have on the overall property. And my main concern too is having access to be able to fully enjoy this property. As it is, I'm being denied, full enjoyment of my yard due to extremely wet conditions and standing water for a good portion of the year, as it is now, and as it will be through the spring and continue to be. And just concerned still that we're not going to have any further problems resulting from the development of this lot. And I know dry wells, obviously you can't excavate down into an already wet material and expect it to be able to take on more water. There's no capacity in the soil. The drainage in this area, and due to the soil conditions, is extraordinarily poor.
Right. Yeah, I'm okay. So board members, does anyone have questions for Mr. Pryor?
Yeah, I do. Bill Rosen here.
Rosen.
Just clarify for me, Mr. Pryor, You said you're located to the south of this property, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Are you in a butter?
Yes,
Oh, so you're the next lot over.
correct, yes.
And that's where the wetlands on this property is, to the south, is my understanding.
Yes, that's correct.
So your property is in between where the proposed house is going to be and your house. The wetlands is in between, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And my driveway passes through that wetland area.
Yeah, I went through that area. I wasn't exactly sure where when I drove through there on the day that I did, there was still lots of snow on the ground and stuff, so I couldn't see how wet it was, but it did look a lot wet. I went all the way to the end of the cul-de-sac down there.
Yes, and even I'd advise even if you take a look on GIS, Google Earth, any satellite imaging system, you can see at various points the standing water condition on the property for the proposed house, my property, and the surrounding area too as a whole.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't see that very well because there were a lot of snow on the ground, so maybe it wasn't the best day to go out there.
Yeah, if you even on GIS, even on the town's GIS system, any satellite imaging, you can see the standing water on there as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board members' questions for Mr. Pryor? Okay. Mr. Pryor, do you have any other questions at this time?
No, I think that's about all I have for right now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, thank you, sir. Jessica, anyone else out there that?
Yes, Jeremy Volker.
Mr. Volker, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, great. And could you please spell your name?
It's last name is Volker, V as in Victor, Oelker.
Okay, and do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
So please, what would you like to say?
So I am the other adjacent lot to this proposed the property that we're in reference to the immediate east of that property. If you were to look at that mapping that we looked at earlier, that's my property in that imagery to the east. And what I basically, I have a number of concerns. Naturally, as Mr. Pryor stated, we have a severe water issue going on here. I've lived in the neighborhood just about my whole life. I'm 41 years old. I've lived in this neighborhood over 30 years. I purchased this house 6 years ago in 2015. And pretty much, within the first, 3-4 months of living here, started having water problems on the south side of my property. That wetland area that is showed on your maps actually, goes through my land into Mr. Monteforte's land and back into Mr. Pryor's land as well. And it's a significant area. I mean, it's to the point where even in a, moderate situation, it's like unwalkable through the water. As Mr. Clow mentioned in his statement that it's a wooded wetland, it's more than a wooded wetland. Behind my home, there's a pond which seems to be engineered in this property at some point, which is roughly 6 to 7 feet, maybe 8 feet deep. So it's not just simply a wooded wetland. I mean, there's a significant amount of water back here. I've spent a lot of time in the last 5 years trying to, deal with it. I lose a good portion of my backyard throughout easily 3/4 of the year. I'd say, you know, when the water does recede, it's typically in the summer months. Let's say, you know, June, July, August. It seems to fill right back up. You know, as we all know, this year, we encountered a pretty major drought throughout the summer months. And even despite that drought, you know, the water level dried up to a little bit immediately following that drought. Into the months of early October, this water just came rushing right back in. It's essentially like swampland more than anything else. And due to the nature of the way that these lots are set up, essentially landlocked in, there's really no, you know, nowhere for this water to go. It's kind of in like a natural low area, and may have had some effect with some of the recent construction that had been done as referenced back in 2012. But you know, it's definitely an issue. And you know, my concern as a homeowner here and as a homeowner adjacent to this lot is naturally, you know, what's going to happen when it, you know, or if anything is done over there. Bringing in fill is going to displace water. As they mentioned, you know, hard non-porous surfaces where now is, you know, porous dirt and sediment is going to, you know, create areas where, you know, this water is going to have to go somewhere. You know, it's to think of the water rising even further than it is now. You know, I've, you know, gone back to the far back part of my piece of property and seen where the water comes within feet of Mr. Pryor's back patio on his home. I spent countless hours with the previous owner of Mr. Pryor's home, Mr. Marcel Pontebrand, who spent, you know, a lot of time and a lot of money trying to figure out how to overcome these, you know, water problems. So I think, you know, to say I'm concerned is an understatement. You know, I think it's definitely something that, you know, that I, you know, think needs to be strongly considered when anything like this is proposed.
So Mr. Volker, did you get a chance to sort of look at what they were proposing as to mitigating some of these factors?
Yeah, I've taken a strong look at it. You know, and you know, another major concern I see here is the fact that a well, which is noted on this chart, is a dug well. For some reason, and I've talked to different well engineers, you know, Hoxie and a few other well companies. They drilled a couple wells on this property and had very, very poor water supply. And they abandoned those wells and dug a well, was their only source of getting a proper, adequate supply of water. So naturally, my well that supplies my family, my 3 children, and my mother-in-law, myself, my wife, is a dug well, which, if you know, I'm sure you all realize is not 300, 400 feet underground. It's, you know, something someone can crawl into. I mean, it's right, it's a manhole cover. And that's where my water supply is. That's how high the water table is. And, you know, that's also a very, very big concern of mine. And then my well actually, which wasn't, you know, to my understanding when I purchased this property, looking at some of the, you know, charts and seeing some of the stuff, my well is actually located on the other side of the property line. And it's marked on the thing here as the existing well serving the property, but it's actually not measured out to this proposed AX20 system that they're proposing for the structure here. So
So wait, so the well that's, there are two wells that are identified,
Correct.
right? So you're saying your well isn't identified on the plan?
It's identified and it's not, I can't tell how they have this worded here. But the well is actually on the other side of the property line. It says existing well. It makes no reference to the fact that this is a surface level well. This is a dug well. And it doesn't actually show any dimensional, other than the well radius reaching out to, my home or whatever. I can't see the reference. The reference to where it says existing well shows, a radius that does not meet the proposed system or
Right.
WTS system. But the actual well that my home is supplied from does not actually fall within that range. So I mean, my well is, as I explained, is a,
Shallow.
well, yeah.
Okay, so, we'll see what of these, is that it? Or do you want me to see if we can get some more answers?
Well, I mean, that and the fact that, let me see here, I had a couple notes, regarding, as I mentioned, I believe also that, these measurements determining where the wetlands start are very likely incorrect. Determining where this wetland starts, if you happen to be here, as I mentioned, in the month of June or July, it may give you a completely false impression where these wetlands start.
Well, where wetlands are and the water are two different things.
Right, okay, all right.
So, and we can have the engineer explain that as well.
Okay, yep. Okay. And and then I also wanted to make reference as well to the fact that, beyond the fact that, number one, my well is a dug well, the existing water issues, but also the fact that, these regulations, these setbacks are set in place for a reason. The history of this property, which I look back at, I spoke to someone from the Conservation Commission regarding this. Notes were sent to them, to the Department of Environmental Management, for further information that I did not receive yet. The Conservation Commission gave some sort of, approval on December 1st, based on whatever the plan was. But I was also kind of told that, that information, isn't necessarily, they take a lot of things into consideration, but, it's not a actual, Department of Environmental Management type of process. They kind of look at it in terms of, the design and the relevance of the plan. I don't know, enough about that personally, but yeah, so
They know a lot more. They know a lot more than we do.
Yeah.
At the board, and it's their role to as well as DEM and these other agencies to provide their expertise as if something is appropriate.
Sure.
So we sort of rely on their oversight, not oversight, on their recommendations, as well as the testimony of experts. And so that's kind of really what helps us make our determination if something is appropriate. So it's hard for us to say that some of these things aren't factual when there's the expert presenting it as such, right? If we don't have anyone sort of countering it to say, well, it's in fact something else. So we have to sort of rely on these groups to sort of give us the information to say that it's appropriate to do everything that they're doing.
Right. Okay.
you know, and so as much as I understand that the property is wet, and we're gonna ask Mr. Clo about some of these observations and such, but so we're just doing the best we can to sort of understand the information provided by these.
Sure. Sure.
So the Conservation Commission, yes, we do, because they look at things that we don't necessarily consider.
Right.
So.
Gotcha.
Okay, so do you want me to ask Mr. Clo some of this stuff?
Well, I'd be concerned with the well situation, number one, and then, you know, as I said, the relevance of that, you know, what that determination of where this wetland starts and where it ends, and the seasonality of, you know, when they make these determinations would be good.
Well, let's do that. Mr. Clo, what determines a wetland? Like how do we know where it stops and starts?
So as I mentioned, you know, our wetland scientist, he evaluated the wetland edge. So factors that come into play when delineating wetland edge include vegetation, include soil morphology. You know, there's various factors that come into play in determining where the actual edge is, including, you know, water level does, you know, presence of water does, you know, come into play as well. I mean, it's really all factors that are weighed together. So, you know, we have the delineated edge here that was determined, you know, based on those factors.
And in fact, so the presence of water. So, I mean, how could you tell the difference between a wet year and a dry year? Or what if, you know, what tells that difference for you? Like
well, you know, in dry conditions, I mean, you're more, I mean, you really, you know, you're relying on the vegetation, you're relying on soil morphology. You know, that stuff's not going to just disappear because it happens to be a dry period of year. So, you know, you have these telltale markers that you're relying on. Much in the same way that when you do soil evaluations for determining water table, you know, you do a soil evaluation during the dry season, you're establishing the water table based on the soil morphology. So you can see the history in the soils of where that water table is in kind of a consistent high level. So you can make your determination based on that.
So, and in this property in particular, we're talking about adding fill. What about the disbursement of surface water, or what does that do to the water table? What does that do to properties?
Well, you know, like as so you have, you know, we're bringing in fill. The grading is done in such a way not to direct water. You know, instead of, you know, if you, in some situations, if you brought in, you know, a bunch of fill, you could just push water into a different spot that it wasn't going to before. But in this case, you know, we're grading the site in such a way as to make sure that the water's path is directed back to where it's going today. So the water path under existing conditions for this lot is flowing from the north to the south towards that wetland. So even with the fill that's being proposed, we are directing the water in that direction, and kind of, you know, on the sides, you know, on the property to the east. Looking at the contours the way they're shown, they're swaling the water back, you know, around where that fill is, and then towards the wetland area. Then also the other thing that we need to consider here is that, you know, under existing conditions, you have a rainfall event. There's a volume of water that falls in that lot. It's either going to infiltrate into the ground or it's going to run off and flow to the wetlands. Under proposed conditions, due to the, under proposed conditions, we propose the stormwater BMPs to basically mimic what's happening under pre-development conditions. The roof runoff obviously is different than the woods that were there before. That roof runoff is directed into the dry well, which is giving it an opportunity to infiltrate in the ground like it does under existing conditions. Likewise, the rain garden is a place for the stormwater to be directed to and allow it, you know, that you're going to get more runoff from the driveway than you are from the woods. So you direct it to the rain garden to allow it to get into the ground, much like it does today. But overall, the same amount of water is falling under proposed conditions. So that water is either getting into the ground, into the water table, which is connected to the wetland, or it's flowing, running off and flowing to the wetland. So that's going to happen under proposed conditions as well. So the design is basically to mimic the existing conditions and mitigate any potential increases in the runoff. You're trying to get the water into the ground to make sure that you don't get more runoff than you do under existing conditions.
And how about the type of well and the fact that it's a shallow or deep well? Will that have?
As far as for the required setbacks, there's no distinction that's made for residential wells. There's a 100-foot radius that's required. The well that's being referred to, the servicing lot 6, it's labeled as such. We do have a well radius. There are a number of well radiuses that are in the vicinity. The well radius for that one in question is based, the 100-foot well radius is falling just at the edge of the septic tank. The septic tank is not what's required to have a 100-foot radius. The radius for a septic tank is 75 feet. For a building sewer is 50 feet. The leach field, which is where the effluent is discharged into the ground, is actually located, in excess, of the 100 feet. So you have the 100 feet that's at the edge of the septic tank. You're going another 30 to 50 feet further to get to the leach field.
Okay.
So we have well radius shown for that well. We have well radiuses shown for our proposed well. And then there was a third well as well. So we've got, those wells shown in the plan with the radius requirements.
Yeah, and those 100-foot, the one that does get close, that goes through the driveways on their own property, is the one that's servicing the property right now?
The one that's servicing their property is like to the southeast of the proposed home. It's kind of near wetland flag A16.
Okay. Oh,
There's 2 wells shown there in close proximity.
Yeah. Okay.
But as he mentioned, it fell on our subject lot, but we've shown it on the plan. We're honoring the well radiuses to it.
So if you're saying that it's diverting water to where it's already going, and Mr. Pryor's property happens to be that direction, it's not necessarily going to make his location any better, per se.
Yeah, basically it's going where it's going today. We're designing this to not make things any worse. As far as for making anything any better, it's possible if you had enough infiltration going on that improved soil conditions, it's possible you could make an improvement on it. But the reality is this is such a small area that's being developed. I think it would be hard pressed to really make an improvement on this end of the watershed that we're talking about. There may be some sort of restriction down the road that's holding up the water. There could be something else down, further down the line that's holding the water up.
So no adverse impact, no benefit, no adverse impact.
Correct.
Really? Okay.
Can I ask Mr. Volker a question?
Yes, Mr. Mark.
Mr. Volker, you're at number 2, is that correct? He's still there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, and you said Mr. Pryor is at number 10.
That's correct.
And that the pond that you that 6 or 7 foot deep pond, that wetland,
Yes.
is that on Mediterranean or is that on your 2 lots? Because as I look at a wetlands map on GIS, I see what you're saying, how the wetlands go all the way across from from you to Mr. Monfort to Mr. Pryor.
Correct.
So that puts you abut both where Mr. Monfort's lot is and Mr. Pryor, correct?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
is that pond structure, whatever it is that straddling both you and Mr. Pryor, or is that on Mediterranean Ave?
That's directly in my backyard. That's directly to the south of my home, probably 75, maybe 90 feet directly behind my home.
So not quite to Mediterranean Ave then?
No. Mediterranean Ave is significantly off to the east of me. They're kind of in an elevate. It's hard to explain unless you see it, because it's an elevation situation. You can't see it from GIS, and you can't really see it from Google mapping images. But they have like an elevated plateau up there where that home, I believe the property owner on that home is Etchell. They're kind of elevated up above me and Mr. Pryor for that.
So all of that is running down into this wetland structure that it's not demarcated on, the GIS map right now. But getting back to that wetland that goes basically across that area, it seems like on Mr. Pryor's, there's basically a sliver within that wetlands to get a driveway in to kind of turn around the back. And based on what I'm looking at, your driveway basically is running parallel to Commodore Perry.
Correct.
Into your lot. And obviously you're not building anywhere, I'm not sure what direction that is, towards Pryor's lot, because you've got that wetland abutting you right there.
Correct.
You're running. But as I look at Mr. Monfort, he looks like he's the most restricted by far of anyone in terms of lot usage, because that wetland goes all the way across, from you, most of his lot, and touches into Mr. Pryor's. So it leaves the smallest sliver of a buildable area that's abutting the largest amount of wetlands over all three lots of yours. The three lots that, seem where the concern is. Is that correct?
Well, in relation to the wetlands aspect of it, I mean, as you look at your mapping, that's probably true. If you were to look at the actual flood map, or actually look at the flooding, one of the gentlemen there mentioned that he drove in and saw a lot of snow and ice, couldn't really tell where the water was. If he was to come in here as it sits now, and I would invite anyone to come on in and take a look around. It's a substantial amount of water. It's from that pond, which you can see from your imagery, pretty much all the way to the south on my lot, all the way into Mr. Pryor's land and encroaching on his home and his back patio is water through and through.
Right, but I mean, we can only deal with what, like the experts say to us and tell, so again, to look at a flood map, there's nothing on the map within this area that, pertains to flooding.
Right.
So,
I guess I want to make the point too that, when you talk about a flood event, everyone just kind of thinks like, yeah, of course we, end up with a year every 10 or something where we have some extraordinary amount of rain. I've been here for 6 years, and this has been an ongoing thing every single year for the last 6 years. Previous owners of the home made reference to it as well. So I want to be clear when I say that, when you talk about, when I mentioned flooding, this is kind of, I've seen temporary flooding. This is kind of a little bit more than that, in my opinion, anyways.
right. And what I'm just like, we have to make our decision based on what, like as the chairman had said, by the experts and the data that we have in front of us.
Right.
And, I mean, we can't go by, I hate to say it, but implied flooding or, you know,
Right.
the potential of things that might happen in the future. It's what we're looking at now. And we're looking at wetlands that are, you know, on our GIS map. And we're looking at a flood map that doesn't cover anything in the area. So, you know, we're trying to narrow the scope of, you know, the decision-making process here by dealing with the facts of, you know, what's presented to us.
Right.
And, you know, again, by looking at the lot, you know, again, I'm looking at it and saying, you know, more than anyone, Mr. Montfort's probably the most impacted in terms of land usage, given the amount of wetlands going through his lot. And that it seems like he's got that one little corner, you know, obviously, and that's why he's seeking relief to work within, you know, a building envelope it doesn't, you know, give full use of one's own land. So.
Right.
That was it.
Okay, thank you. Board members, any other questions? Okay, Mr. Volker or Mr. Pryor, do you have any more questions? Comments? Jessica, anyone else out there?
Mr. Volker raised his hand again.
Oh,
Yeah, I just wanted to, you know, I don't, you know, when we refer to Mr. Cloet, you know, Deprete Engineering, you know, I'm assuming, you know, everyone realizes that, you know, I assume we're talking to someone that was paid to, you know, by the person, you know, attempting to, you know, build a lot, you know, not an independent, you know, he's not an independent, you know, contractor. So I just kind of wanted to, you know, make that clear as well, that this isn't an independent, you know, assessment of, you know, what's going on, and you know, in the situation at hand.
Mr. Volker, they can't really misrepresent the science, because they will lose their credibility as well as their, you know, their.
Yeah, I understand that.
You know,
I'm just saying this. Yeah.
They can't sort of violate their ethical standard within the industry.
Correct.
And that's why we have to rely and we swear them in as experts, because they, you know, we have to sort of understand what they are presenting us, and they've presented every other DEM and conservation commissions of the like, you know, the information to move this through.
Right.
I understand, I guess, but the only thing we can really counter his testimony with is another expert.
Right, which would be my next, you know, my next concern is, you know, if it was to come to a situation, I mean, I can't speak for Mr. Pryor. I think he made his point clear, and, you know, I think I made my point clear that I'm very concerned about the water levels rising, very concerned about any adverse effects construction, fill, engineering of that lot could have on my my water supply to my home. You know, I understand, you know, I just wanted to, you know, kind of make these points clear. And, you know, the situation with the water is a huge issue. My wife and I deal with it consistently, constantly. I mean, we look out to the south of our house and see this, you know, problem, and really the fact that, you know, there's nowhere for this water to go. There's no way to address it. It's very frustrating. You know, you can imagine as you just watch this water rise and rise and rise, and year after year get worse and worse and worse. And you just kind of say to yourself, well, you can't just, you know, put in a drain or unclog the drain and let this water out. It just keeps coming up. And,
well,
you know,
their testimony is that they are not going to impact the surrounding area by building on this lot.
That's just speculation. I mean, clearly it's you know,
well, it's sort of
because I'm sure when they built, I was around when they built Mr. Pryor's home back in 2012, and it was a very, you know, it was a process. You know, they brought in a ton of fill, they compacted a bunch of stuff, they put a house in a very low, wet, swampy area,
right.
And that project resulted in some of the water problems that we experience now. So naturally, in my opinion, what's to say that this isn't going to happen again and compound the problems even further when they now take this lot that's to the west of me and fill and excavate and go on, and what's to say, I mean, Mr. Clow expressed that, yes, they're doing everything within their, guidelines to deal with the water, but he's not exactly saying that anything's going to get any better. And that for him to say that things won't get worse is kind of, to me, a little, that seems to me, I mean, outside of his, math and measurements, I can't really see how that's would go on the record as, fact.
Okay. I understood. I mean, but really the only way we can counter it is by other expert testimony. So, board members, any other questions? For Mr. Pryor or Mr. Volker? Okay. Jessica, is there someone?
Yes, Maura Gazzaro.
Okay.
She needs to unmute.
Yep, I just unmuted, sorry. Hi, good
morning.
evening, everyone.
Yeah.
Hello, I'll be short, but I live at 60 Heather Hollow. And I guess I am southwest of this property, a little more down the road from.
You swear.
I'm sorry? Oh, swear, I have to be sworn in, right? Sorry.
Yep. No, I'm just, okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
Could you please spell your name?
Yes, Maura, last name is Gazzaro, G as in George, A, Z as in zebra, E-R-R-O.
Great. And do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Great. Go ahead.
Yes. So I live at 60 Heather Hollow Drive, which is about, I think, southwest of this property. I've lived here since 2014, and I live a little further down the road, further from Route 1 than this property. I am not impacted by the water issue that Mr. Volker and Mr. Pryor are. However, I just wanted to, for the record, just say that having lived here, I have 3 young children and I am constantly out and about in the neighborhood. It's a quiet, small neighborhood. However, just based on my observation, I have seen the very large amounts of water in both properties, both at 2 and 10 Heather Hollow Drive. I am very familiar with the vacant lot there that the Monteforts own, and I understand the predicament they're in. And I also have listened to this entire meeting and understand the science as well. And I understand that the board has to make a decision based on the science. I just, the engineer who from Dupree Engineering, Mr. Clow, absolutely understand his expertise. He clearly is an expert in this area. However, I just would ask that further consideration be given to how this will adversely impact, not the 2 and 10 Heather Hollow, because it is a very large amount of water that they already realize in their yards most of the year. And I would also, I know it's not a requirement, however, I appreciate that Mr. Rosen came down the road to look. If the board were consider coming and seeing this property in person during a non-frozen period of time, just because it is, I would like to know if, I guess further examination be given to the property and engineering aspects of how this will affect other areas of land around that property and it all being private single home residents. I worry that not only will the already impacted areas from the water be affected, but that other areas around here be affected. I mean, I don't know if where we live, we come down, we are on the southern part of the hill, right? It's from, what they call Matunic Hills across Route 1. So everything flows down towards us. And so I just worry that if further fill be put into this land that's already very wet, that, it could impact and I'm just not, it may not impact me at all. I don't know, but I just worry that it will impact just in general this area and make things a lot more wet. So I just ask that respectfully the board consider that. And maybe before taking a definitive vote on this, that, those things are considered and perhaps extra steps are taken for that, research and examination to take place by the engineer or the town engineer. I'm not sure who that person would be, but that consideration be taken. And that's all I want to say. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I think the challenge that for us is, our observations aren't necessarily a substitute for the expert testimony is the
Sure.
challenge. And but I understand the concerns that you all have. So I'm not sure if we can have Mr. Close sort of explain any more that would help board members, but let's does the board have any questions for Ms. Gazzaro, first of all? No? Okay.
Mr. Cagnetta, I do have
Yep.
another hand raised. I don't know if you want to speak with Mr. Clow or if you want the next person and maybe all in one.
Nope. Let's bring some more comments to see what they're thinking.
Okay, this is Jim.
Okay, Jim? You there?
I'm here.
Okay. So please state and spell your name.
My name is James Volker, V as in Victor, Oelker. I'm Jeremy's father.
Okay. And do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great.
Concern.
So go ahead, tell me, Jim, what's the concern?
My big concern is I've lived on Heather Hollow since 1974. And my concern is the evolution of the piece of property. When I first built my house here, and I'm not affected by the water because I'm on the other side of Heather Hollow, closer to the pond, and quite elevated. But the evolution of the property, when I first moved here, all that property behind 2 and 10, all that property at that time was a nursery. The person that owned the land used to have trees and shrubs and stuff that he raised on that property for his business. I can't remember its name right now. Stewart, it was Stewart Nursery owned the property. And at the time, it was swampy, but not wet like it is now. Now, in the spring, we have otters in there chasing frogs. And in the fall, we have ducks in there on the property because it's not wet anymore. It's wet, but it's water. I mean, some places there's a foot of water, and it wasn't that way 30, 25, 30 years ago. And you have to realize that it is a hollow. To the east of my son's lot and all the way down, that area is what is probably a 10 or 12-foot drop off from the land that's up by Mediterranean Avenue. Some of that land has been cleared, and I think that we're getting a lot more runoff from the adjacent property to the east. And what was at one time a nursery is now flooded land. And my concern is where's it going to go in the next 5 years or 10 years? My son, where he lives on 2 Heather Hollow Drive, when they built that house, they brought in tons and tons and tons of fill. So he's elevated quite a bit, but then his backyard, the slope in his backyard goes down. And now at the end of where his fill is, it's water. in his backyard, he built a fire pit and an area for entertainment, but he can't use it now because 3/4 of the year it's got a foot of water in it. I just don't, I understand Mr. Monaforte's situation, but I'm just concerned what that property is going to look like 5 years from now, seeing what's happened in the last 20 years where the water level has gone up at least 12 to 14 inches, in my opinion, and more than that in some areas. And the water is trapped in there and there's no place for it to go.
Right. Okay.
What used to be a nursery is now, 12 inches of water with otters and ducks and everything else in it.
So I guess my only concern would be that how do we know that Mr. Montefort's property is going to contribute? Because it sounds like whatever's going on there has been the fault of everything else around it. So
yeah, but my concern,
how do we know building on this lot is going to make is part of the problem?
Yeah, I'm not saying it is. My big concern is what's going to happen 4 or 5 years ago if the water level keeps rising, and how much more of Mr. Monaforte's lot is going to be flooded, and how much higher is the water table going to be?
Well, that's yes.
That's nature. That's up to nature. We can't answer that question, but it's a concern I have.
Of course. Okay. Well, thank you. I mean,
Okay.
I know that's really important to understand that history of it. Board members, do you have questions for Mr. Volker? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Volker. Jessica, is there someone? No. Okay. Mr. Kenyon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
With us, I'm really sorry.
No, we understand the neighbors' concerns, and they should all be able to express them to the board. I did want to note that, this property is zoned residential. The only real use that's permitted on this property is a house. It's permitted by right. There's no relief necessary to build the house. There's no setback requirements, no dimensional relief, no lot coverage relief. We're here for the septic system. Because the septic system, the OWTS, is located within 150 feet of a wetland. DM requires 50 feet. The town has an enhanced review. And under the enhanced review, you have section 504 of the zoning ordinance. You have certain development standards that a property owner needs to meet in order to cite that OWTS within 150 feet of the wetlands. So these requirements are above and beyond what other property owners need to do when they build their houses. So during the review, and there was a question about, well, who reviews Mr. Clough's work? Well, during this process, Rhode Island DEM goes out and they verify these wetlands. So they go out and make sure that the wetlands that have been flagged are correct. They also review and approve the design of the OWTS itself. And then prior to going to this board, we go to the Conservation Commission. And your Conservation Commission is probably the most informed Conservation Commission in the state. They go through everything. It normally takes a couple meetings for one of these because they do go through things in such details. As far as the neighbor's concern, which I think mostly is regarding runoff and drainage and not as much regarding the OWTS location with the set to the wetlands. But the benefit of the 504 review is you do have some enhanced requirements. one of those requirements is that the buildable lot coverage, permeable surface has to be less than 15%. So normally you have a general lot building coverage requirement in your zoning ordinance. Under section 504.1, they look at the buildable area and you're only allowed to have pervious surface up to 15% of that. So that's much less than what's usually allowed when you're building a house where you don't need this type of relief. And that was one of the commission members, even though we met that requirement, they said, how about if you reduce that driveway even more just to make this even better? And which is why they requested that and why we agreed to do it. The runoff requirement for this, the drainage is even more enhanced than is normally required. Mr. Clough testified that we have to show that there'll be no net increase between pre and post development site conditions. So from what's there now to after we build, for volume or rate of stormwater runoff or a 24-hour, 25-year rainfall event onto adjacent properties or roadways. So that standard is actually more than what's normally required. So we can't have any runoff to adjacent properties that increases by either volume or rate for that type of storm. So when Mr. Clough says there's going to be no negative impact on the neighbors, that's what he means, because we have to design this in order to meet that requirement. It was asked, is he going to make it better? And sometimes you do make it better. He was being honest and saying, I don't know that this is going to make it better, but we have to show that we're definitely not going to make it any worse. And I believe we've done that. So, I mean, this board knows it's a special use permit. There are certain development standards that we have to meet. And I believe Mr. Clough has testified that we do meet with all those. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kenyon. Board members, questions for Mr. Kenyon? No? Okay. So board members, any thoughts?
I don't have a problem with it.
Okay. We've certainly had an opportunity to hear some of the concerns. So does someone want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll try. Let me get my
Mr.
glasses.
Rosen, I'll let you know that I did not read in the exhibits.
Yeah,
So I apologize for that.
I saw that, so I brought it up. Let me get my notes and stuff here. You did read in the petition, though?
I did read in the petition. Yes.
Yeah, okay. The motion to, I'm going to make the motion to approve the petition of, as described on the agenda by the chairman. The following individuals spoke. John Kenyon was the lawyer for Mr. Montefiore. Jason Clough was the engineer working on the project. And there were 4 potential neighbors, William Pryor, Jeremy Volker, Maura Gazzaro, and James Volker, who had some concerns mainly about the water problems associated with the neighborhood, the drainage that might be impacted from the wetlands, and the drainage into the wetlands and out of the wetlands, and the problems of maybe Jeremy Volker had a problem with the existing wells that are associated with his property or located on an adjacent property. James Volker talked about the history of the situation, and Maura Gazzaro was concerned about the impact on the neighborhood by the water problems. What was consistent with all the neighbors, the potential neighbors, I should say, was that there's a terrible water problem that may not have been there many, many years ago, since there was as Mr. James Volker indicated, a nursery there that functioned fairly well in growing plants, etc. But maybe because of climate change or something else that the water problems have increased. As I mentioned, I did take a drive down there and looked over the neighborhood, but as I indicated, I was there on right after the heavy snow that came less than a week ago. And the land was mainly covered by snow. So I couldn't get a good idea of what the water problems were. The following materials were entered. I have a listing here. The application with cover letter and narrative signed and dated January 5th. Owner authorization form signed and notarized on January 6th. Vision appraisal field card map 79-3 lot 15. A 200-foot radius map and a butters list. Rhode Island DEM OWTS construction permit dated June 15, 2020. Correspondence from Dupree Engineering and Jason P. Clow, PE, which I assume stands for Principal Engineer, dated November 9th, 2020. Drainage calculations prepared by Jason P. Clow, PE, dated November 5th, 2020. 3 pages there. OWTS site plan prepared by Dupree Engineering, Jason P. Clow, PE, dated March 5th, 2020, with revisions on September 25th, 2020 and November 5th, 2020, 2 pages. Conservation Commission OWTS advisory opinion to zoning board dated December 2nd, 2020, which was 2 pages long, and a legal notice, proof of certified mailings and notarized affidavit of mailing. And there was also a property map, an updated property map. I don't remember the date, that was presented by Mr. Clow. And he showed it on the screen, which showed the change in the driveway that the Conservation Commission had recommended, in going from 12 feet down to 9 feet at the entrance point. Okay, the findings of fact, the board finds that the special use is not specifically authorized by this ordinance. Oh, it is. Wait, you'll have to help me here, Chairman, Mr. Chairman. The board finds that the special use permit is
specifically authorized.
Is specifically authorized by this ordinance because ordinance number 504-.1b talks about, what does it talk about? Oh, the OWTS being within the 150-foot radius of the wetlands, and the request is for it to be 95 feet within the wetlands, or as I remember Mr. Klaus saying, it was actually 102 feet within that radius. And the DEM and the Conservation Commission, the DEM requires only 50 feet, and the Conservation Commission has made a recommendation to us that the construction of this OWTS is should be considered as appropriate to this specific lot, and should thus be, we should thus approve this petition. The board finds that the special use permit meets all the criteria set forth in the subsection of this ordinance authorizing such special use, because it is, the plans have been altered or changed at the request of the Conservation Commission, which is our own Conservation Commission, and they made the recommendation to us that we carry out the recommendation. We've had lots of discussion here about the property itself, but the setback requirements, et cetera, associated with this property seem to fit within that, and we're not considering that. We're only considering the OWTS itself. And the board finds that granting the special use permit will not alter the general character of the surrounding area or impair the intent or purpose of this ordinance or the comprehensive plan of the town. In so doing, the board has considered whether or not satisfactory provisions and arrangements have been or will be made concerning, but not limited to anything but the OWTS that we're considering here tonight. There are no potential problems associated with ingress and egress or off-street parking or all the other things that are mentioned within this ordinance. As a result, I move approval of the petition as presented by Mr. Kenyon.
Thank you, Mr. Rosen. Can I get a second?
Second, with an amendment, Mr. Chairman, the date of the corrected site plan that Bill referenced is December 9th.
Thank you, Mr.
2020.
Daniels.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Okay, any other discussion? And Mr. Rosen, you're okay with that change?
Yes, I am, because I did reference it but I couldn't remember the date, and I appreciate Mr. Daniels.
And Mr. Daniels, you can second that. Okay.
You're welcome.
Any other discussion? No. Mr. Rosen?
Aye.
Mr. Daniels?
Aye.
Mr. Mark?
Aye.
Mr. Charkowik?
Aye.
Mr. Cagnetta? Aye. Motion passes.
Great. Thank you very much. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we're barely halfway through. Yeah, so we're probably going to be able to just hear this next one, which is the petition of Maria Early, which means the Beal petition, the Babcock petition, and the Contemporary Theater petition would have to carry over to the availability of the board members, which hopefully is next Wednesday. So we just have to do a quick roll call to make sure that everyone that is here now can be available on Wednesday. Mr. Daniels, can you be here on Wednesday?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Mark?
Yes.
Mr. Charkowik, can you be here? Okay, Mr. Rosen, you could be here.
What's the date?
24th,
24th.
March 24th?
February 24th.
February, I'm sorry. Okay. Can I be here? I think I can, yes.
So
I was concerned that I was getting my COVID-19 shot next week.
You don't want to stop that,
But
nor do we want.
I think I'm getting it the 22nd.
I hear the second is much worse than the
Won't
first.
be a problem. Piece of cake, Bill.
Oh, there you go. Good, good. So should we make a motion to continue those?
I would just say, Rob, this is Amy, just ask if any of those applicants themselves can't make it next Wednesday, they should raise their hands and then we can kick them over to March. But if I think if they don't speak up, then yes, motion to continue those to next Wednesday.
So Jess, is there anyone that's
Terry Simpson just came on. I don't know if he's.
I will be available next Wednesday.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Simpson. I appreciate it.
And no one else has popped up, so I think we're good.
So we are looking to extend the, or to continue the petitions of Lucille Beal, Jerry Babcock, and the Contemporary Theater until the 24th. So can we get a motion to do so?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Daniels, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Rosen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, and Jessica, you meant, did you want to take a few minutes?
I
Did
don't
you- or just-
personally, but I think maybe some people may need 5 minutes and then,
So it's 9:49. We'll come back in 5 minutes. And we'll get to the petition of the estate of Christopher Schaefer.
perfect. I think we're all back, Mr. Cagnetta.
Okay, so it is 9:56. The South Kingstown Zoning Board of Review is back in order. So we're gonna start with the petition of Maria Early, executor of the estate of Christopher Schaefer, care of South County Survey Company LLC, James T. Calderon, 382 Main Street, Wakefield, Rhode Island, 02879, for a dimensional variance under the zoning ordinance as follows. The applicant is proposing to reduce the area of an existing lot, AP 46 Lot 4, in an R80 zone. Both lots 3 and 4 are currently non-conforming by dimension. Lot 4 is presently 57,032 square feet and is proposed to become a 43,984 square foot, whereas Lot 3 is presently 18,688 square feet and is proposed to become a 31,737 square feet. The dimensional variance is required per zoning ordinance section 400D, which is the compliance with regulations, section 401, schedule of dimensional regulations, and section 907 are standards of relief. The owner of the property is the estate of Christopher Schaefer, care of Maria Early, executive for premises located at 2040 Ministerial Road, Assessors Map 46, Lot 4, and is zoned R80. And for this property, we have, hang on, I'm in the wrong spot, I believe. So what do we have, Jessica, for
Jim Calderon.
I'm sorry, for the document list?
Oh, sure, sorry.
It's okay.
Second,
2040. Oh, okay, here it is.
got it, sorry, okay.
Yep, I can see it. Sorry. Application signed and dated January 8th, 2021. Owner authorization form signed and notarized January 5th, 2021. Certificate of appointment dated August 24th, 2020. 200-foot radius map and a butters list. Administrative subdivision plan prepared by South County Survey LLC. James T. Calderon. PLS dated January 8th, 2021. Administrative subdivision conditional approval dated October 22nd, 2020. Correspondence from James T. Calderon to Planning Department dated January 5th, 2021. Legal notice, proof of certified mailings and notarized affidavit of mailing. The correspondence of Karen DeMartino, Mansell, 2030 Ministerial Road, received February 8th, 2021. Ann B. Sheffield of 2070 Ministerial Road, received February 16th of 2021. And there was something else that was recently sent to, right? The 2040. There was also one other.
It was the planning board decision to extend the request, I believe is what it was.
Thank you. So this is the January 19th one, the 2021 for South County Survey. This is the request to extend the approval, conditional approval of O'Malley Schaefer Administrative Subdivision, South Kingstown Assessors Map, plot 46, lots 3 and 4. Mr. Calderon, the Planning Department is in receipt of your request, January 5th, 2021, seeking an extension of the conditional approval of administrative subdivision dated October 22nd, 2020 for Assessors Map 46, Lot 3 and 4 with physical addresses of 2040 and 2044 Ministerial Road, conveying 13,049 square feet plus or minus from Plot 46, Lot 4 and Plot 46, Lot 3. Upon review, the request for an extension for the conditional approval is granted. The approval is hereby extended for an additional 90 days through and including April 21st, 2021. The conditions of approval as stipulated in the October 22nd, 2020 conditional approval remain in full force and effect. So who is here for this petition?
I am here, James Calderon.
James Calderon, okay. And could you please spell your name for the...
Certainly, Caldarone.
And you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do, yes I do.
So please, Mr. Calderon, go ahead.
Thanks very much. Hopefully this is a little quicker than the last couple. I think this is a pretty straightforward application here. You kind of spelled it all out for me, but what we are doing here is an administratively subdividing, which is typically can be approved administratively by the administrative officer. But in this case, because the two properties are in the R80 zone and are both undersized for the zone, it does require a variance. And so here we are. What we're actually doing is we're moving a property line back to where it once was when this was originally platted back in 1932. And I'm going to pull up the plat here right now, but I don't even know if you guys want, well, actually, you know what, I take that back. I can't share this screen because it's not on the same computer that I'm zooming from. But the original plat, I have it here in front of me, from 1932 had the property line where we're going to put it today, where we're asking to put it today. And at some point in the late 1970s, best of my research shows, or actually, I'm sorry, it was mid 1970s. The property line was moved by 100 feet. The parcel was conveyed. I believe it was done prior to zoning. There's no history of any kind of application that was submitted for that. And we're simply asking to move that property line back to where it once was now. And what this does is, in effect, it balances the area between the two properties. Right now, we have kind of a one property that's much larger than the other, and we're just balancing the area between them. I should say Maria Early, who is the executor of the estate of Christopher Schaefer, was unable to stick it out through the entire meeting. So she is gone, but I do have Karen O'Malley and Kathleen O'Malley that are purchasing the property back from Maria as she's selling this here, if you have any questions for them as well. So
right.
Hopefully pretty straightforward.
Seems that. But let's see, board members, do you have any questions for Mr. Calderon? No. Okay. It does seem pretty straightforward. It's so I don't particularly have any concerns. I don't feel the need necessarily to call up any other witnesses per se.
And I think you have if I may, I think you have a couple of letters from abutters in favor of this.
We do.
Yep.
So the first one I have is from Ann Sheffield. To whom it may concern is the owner of the property located at 2070 Ministerial Road, which abuts both properties. Christopher Schaefer, care of Maria Early, executor, and Kieran and Mary Kathleen O'Malley have no objections to the agreement between Maria Early and Kieran O'Malley and support the petition for the dimensional variance below. If you have any questions, you can email them or call, and that's signed by N.P.B. Sheffield. And
so she is located just to the north of these two properties, and she abuts both properties on her entire southern border and the full extent of both of these two properties' northern boundary as well.
okay, excellent. And I might not have identified the other.
I believe you did.
Was that in the, oh, right, the Karen DiMartino.
Correct.
Okay.
I have it if you'd like me to read it, Mr.
Could you
Chairman.
please just,
Mhm.
thank you.
1 second. I had it, I should say. Sorry. To whom it may concern, please be advised that I support without any reservation Maria Early's petition for a dimensional variance as required per the Town of South Kingstown zoning ordinance, section 400D, according to the notice of public hearing on this matter that I recently received. Unfortunately, I'm unable to participate in the Zoom video conference on this subject scheduled for February 17th, 2021 at 7 p.m. Thank you for your attention. Sincerely, Karen DiMartino Menzel, 2030 Ministerial Road, Wakefield, Rhode Island. And this was received on February 8th.
Great. So 2 letters of support, no objections. Board members, any thoughts? Motions?
Yeah, I'll do
Daniels?
Do you just want to ask if anyone present?
Oh, sorry. Does anyone present want to speak on this behalf? And Jessica, is there anyone out there that's raising their hand?
No one's raising their hand.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. Mr. Daniels.
Motion to approve. the
Sorry, wait,
petition of-
this is Amy.
Oh,
I
Amy.
did just see a hand raised.
Oh, did you? Okay.
I think right as we said, there's no one. it
Yep.
came-
Joe K.
Okay, Mr. K.
He needs to unmute. There you go.
Yeah, hi, everybody. Joe Koziarek, 2014 Ministerial Road.
Okay, could you just spell your name, please?
It's a hard one.
That's why I'm asking.
Kosiarek.
Okay, great. And you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir, I do.
Go ahead, Joe, please.
So I've read the letters from Mrs. Sheffield and Dr. Menzel. I live one driveway south of Dr. Menzel, and we have no objection. We support this variance. Good neighbors. They do a lot of good things for the community. They just want to keep a little border between their properties. They have some green space and all. So my wife and I, we totally support this variance. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you sticking around and voicing your opinion.
Great,
Thank you.
thanks. Thank you.
Jessica, anyone else?
No one else.
Okay. Mr. Daniels?
Motion to approve the petition of Maria Early, executor of the estate of Christopher Schaefer. This request is for a dimensional variance, and it's required under our zoning ordinance, section 400D, 401, and of course, section 907, standards of relief. Mr. James Calderon, engineer, spoke for the applicant. And basically, what the applicant is wanting to do is to combine 2 lots back to where they were some time ago. The complete description of the petition was read into the record, and the documents that have been supplied in support of the application have been read into the record. The key document being the administrative subdivision approval by the planning board. Basically, the lot lines have been approved by the planning board, and now it's a formality for the zoning board to approve because the lots were undersized and were non-conforming. So therefore, a variance is requested and required in order to proceed. There was no opposition to the request. We had letters of support from Ms. Sheffield, excuse me, Ms. DiMartino, and Mr. K, we'll call him. And they're all in support of this, what amounts to an administrative subdivision approval. The board finds that the hardship from which the applicant seeks relief is due to the unique characteristics of the subject land. We have two lots that are both non-conforming in an R80 district, and this will, by combining these two lots, will bring them closer to conformity and will allow the current owner to proceed with parceling her estate to other individuals. The hardship is not the result of any prior action of the applicant and does not result primarily from the desire of the applicant to realize greater financial gain, because they simply want to put the lots back, the lot lines back where they were originally, and to create one large lot. This will not alter the general characteristics of the area because, as I mentioned before, this is an R80 zone, and this will in fact increase the size of this particular lot to close to compliance. This is the relief is least necessary, excuse me, once again, because they're simply bringing the lot line, removing one lot line, moving it, and making one complete lot. The hardship suffered by the owner, if we don't grant this, amounts to more than a mere inconvenience, because the two lots will become difficult to utilize fully without the combination of the two lots to create the one larger lot. There are no conditions on this approval, and I would move that we approve.
Motion was made by Mr. Daniels. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Charkowik. Any other discussion? Mr. Daniels?
Aye.
Mr. Charkowik?
Aye.
Mr. Rosen?
Aye.
Mr. Mark?
Aye.
And Mr. Cagnetta? Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Have a nice
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you.
All right. So same bat time next week, 7 o'clock.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Have a good night.
Thank you all.
All right. See you next week.
Night.
See you guys.
Bye.